salespeople are getting paid loads of money. Finance know how much money they're getting paid, and there's celebrations going on, and your marketing team, especially sort of the more junior members, your marketing team, maybe CS, maybe finance and BI, there's nothing that comes through. It doesn't make a difference to them, and that can really frustrate people.
I'm John Wright, and you're listening to Affiliate BI, the business intelligence and affiliate marketing podcast brought to you by SnapStrong. Welcome to the Affiliate BI podcast. Today we're chatting with Ben Austen. He's the Director of Revenue Operations at Find.co. He's experienced in running paid search and paid social for a search agency he co-founded, and he's the head of marketing and sales director's roles, or actually no, he was doing those roles. And he's got a lot of experience on the investment and M&A side. So Ben, I'm happy to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I think that's a lovely intro, and I'm sure people who know me well would be questioning whether I know as much about those things as you're giving me kudos for.
Well, we've had a chance to chat before, so I know you've got lots of experience. So I'm happy to dig into questions, especially related to the finance side of the business, which sounds obvious, but I actually think it's a lacking topic and things that maybe people kind of lack the education on in our industry. And I just want to get your quick take on that.
Yeah, sure. So, well, it's actually a passion. It's a bit of a passion of mine, which sounds odd. But I actually did another podcast recently, and I was asked for an unpopular opinion in the world of RevOps. And my reply was, the more time you spend with finance, the more you'll succeed. Um, and I suppose if I just sort of dial back and sort of define RevOps, because it might be slightly new to some people, or it means different things in different businesses. So for me, I think a simple way of describing RevOps is it's the sort of the co-pilot to the CRO, is a very sort of pithy way of doing that. But to expand on that, you've got, RevOps is there to integrate and align the commercial or go-to-market teams. So marketing, sales, customer success. But underneath that, you've got a layer of finance and BI, and that scale, like, to deliver scalable revenue growth. That's what RevOps does. And it sort of takes a Swiss approach. It should sort of play a neutral role across go-to-market functions and join the dots.
Right.
And historically, I think the sort of the best in inverted commas places for them to report into the CRO, but actually the discussion at the moment is whether they should report into a CFO. And I think there's like pluses and minuses with that. But the interesting thing about the finances, I think that RevOps often comes out of the sales ops world. I think that's where it started. And then you've got less marketing ops people, and you've got even less customer success ops people, just because sales is sales and it's shiny. I think there's even less people who have the finance angle. Um, and, a couple of things I was thinking about before we spoke about this is, in a business, I think it's like 90% of businesses fail because of cash flow. Like, cash is king, right? If you've never spoken to a CFO before and you want to get in their good graces, just sort of wander up and start saying, "Oh, cash flow is important." We've got to think about that. Um, but you know, to give some real life examples, like if you're in marketing want to spend as much of their budget in H1 as possible. Obviously, you've got seasonality and things, but if you get rid of your money, your spend, the company can't take it off you, right? But actually, you need to understand what that does to cash flow, or could do to cash flow, and have that conversation up front. Or if sales hit a number, but the mix is off. And actually, this is something I saw happen quite often: is sales hit a number, so everyone's happy, but the mix is off. Understand what that does to, say, revenue recognition, and therefore the budget next year. And the last one that I think is always a rich vein is discounting. So it comes purely off the bottom line. So from like a CFO or anyone in finance's point of view, discounting is just awful because it just hits margin. And there needs to be a clear reason and sort of rules around that. Yeah. So I think that's, like, lots of things I could talk about. But I think it's key.
I'm definitely going to ask a bunch more questions because
Yeah,
I think it's a topic like what you just said there about revenue plus BI. I mean, when I was thinking about what is business intelligence today and how do people get these skills and where does it like how does it get applied to any industry? And I think a lot of it always comes down to finance in some way. And then it's like how do these two skills kind of come together? And I think it's kind of like I don't want to say it's a lost art. I just think it's lost on a lot of businesses. And like you said, when all these companies are constantly going out of business, it really comes down to all these hard questions that people don't really want to work together as a team, like sales and marketing, kind of fighting each other.
yeah. The classic finger point between sales and marketing of leads are rubbish, salespeople can't be bothered to phone the leads is sort of an endless cycle. But I think if you can layer over or at least understand the finance layer, the insights that you can give, especially as RevOps sits in that's more central role, that Swiss role, so to speak. The insights that you can give are much richer. And I think that's where you move from a sort of a tactical to a strategic level, because some of the things that we've just talked about is, just touched on, and happy to go into detail on them if you want, is, these are things that the board are interested in, or the investors are, or they're trying to fundraise. Like these are the questions which actually matter. And obviously the sales number does matter and the marketing budget does matter, but it's not always the be all and end all.
Yeah. And I think before I dive into the first question, I know from our experience of, raising investment, it's like we started to meet people more that were like you, that were asking us these tough questions. And I think for us, it was a good exercise because it really said, well, where are we weak? We're weak in the actual finance part of having to explain the numbers and show trends and like you said, have a proper strategy to go, what are we going to do to fix this? How are we going to make things better? And it sounds maybe to some people sounds trivial, but unless you have that person on your team or the other person on the other side of the fence throwing these tough questions at you, it's you're able to just not do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was listening to a recent episode of the Revenue Vitals podcast with Chris Walker. I've been mentioning this guy quite a bit. He's one of my favorite podcasts. He's a B2B sales and marketing pro. And he said that one major problem for a lot of B2B marketers and salespeople is that they don't have a financial acumen, that they don't understand how their work can have a profound impact on the sales team, especially the marketers. So let's dive into like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's pretty bang on from Chris. And I think part of that is sort of whether it's organizational design or it's just um, how people tend to run go-to-market teams or that commercial team. So I think a lot of it is having the right people in the right room consistently. So what what I tend to observe with finance is that they're either, at the back of the room in the old days or on a call, camera might be off. They don't have a real defined role in sessions and they're just sort of there. And therefore for them to join the dots between sort of, the commercial teams and finance and the flip doesn't happen. And I think it's about leadership working really hard to like empower people both ways to make it work. Or also, traditionally you get your stereotypes of sort of, finance can be a bit boring, that, or they can be the people constantly saying no. And again, I think it's up to sort of leadership to shape it as it's our target. It's like this business target. It's not sales as target. It's, all of that, as I said, marketing, sales, CS, and then finance and BI, it's everyone's target. I mean, it should be the whole company's target, but if you're starting to build that culture, and once people start to feel that they are part of that, and actually, you can go as far as remuneration, right? Finance people don't get paid; they don't have any skin in the game. So I think there's lots of different ways that you can make it happen, but it starts with the leadership.
Yeah. It's what you said there was actually one of the questions that I wanted to dig into, which is typically sales are the ones that are rewarded with bonuses and performances. But when you have a marketing team that can really have a profound impact on not just sales, but the conversion rate, It's where's their reward? Or what about the product people that built an amazing product that sells itself where maybe you don't always need as much of a sales team? It's I think you're spot on for this revenue and bonus alignment just being off, and it's like the way it's always been done, and no one's changing it.
Yeah. And so I always say to my bosses, I want to get paid. Well, I'd love to get paid how much you get paid, but I want to get paid like how you get paid, right? So if the bonus is based on, EBITDA or whatever it is, then that's what I want because then we're aligned, right? And I think if you can do that across those teams, and it it sounds small, but you have a big month, sorry, a big quarter, you hit your target or you go past your target. Salespeople are getting paid loads of money. Finance know how much money they're getting paid, and there's celebrations going on, and your marketing team, especially sort of the more junior members, your marketing team, maybe CS, maybe finance and BI, there's nothing that comes through. It doesn't make a difference to them. And that can really frustrate people.
Okay. So you're you're fairly new to Find.co, and you're joining basically a new industry where some of it's iGaming. And I wanted to ask, like, when you were joining, did you have a look at the landscape to say, okay, we've got affiliates over here, we've got a lot of different B2B suppliers, and then we have the operations, which is the affiliate programs and affiliate managers. Did you look through the job landscape, and do you think that for the role that you have with Find.co, do you think that there's really not a lot of these jobs, or there should be more of them? Like, there's tons of salespeople, tons of commercial people, but then I just think that's as high a level as it gets.
Um, I would say, well, it's been an interesting job market the last sort of year or so. So it's definitely been just slower, like across the board. Um, I think that especially in the US, RevOps um, as a um, as a discipline, the stat that gets thrown around is it's sort of the fastest growing or one of the fastest growing roles, especially at the US in the US, and I'm based in the UK, and the UK sort of follows behind that, and I would say generally the world does. Um, I think what's happened is that um, especially the VC or the PE houses have realized that they need people to join the dots, and that there's value in this, right? If you can create the lead to cash journey from the earliest point that somebody ever knows about you or your product or your brand, all the way through to the money hitting your account, aka with finance, um, having someone join those dots is really important and it works. And so once the sort of the money people basically start to realize that, then that becomes a little bit more of a cookie cutter, that template, right? So I don't quite know when it happened, but when sort of, customer success and account management became like the way of doing things. Whereas before, right, you just have just salespeople and they sort of did everything. Um, but I think that was I think now people would say it's absolutely mad for a salesperson to sell and to manage the account because it's just a very different like brain shape. And I think that's sort of happening on this joining the dots side of things.
Because you're saying joining the dots, and I'm just thinking in my head that we have this weird problem, not just in affiliate marketing, but in sales, where there's always a there's not always a pure attribution of where not only where did the sale come from, but what is the value of the sale. And it kind of goes back to the marketing people, the product people. And I'm just wondering if you think attribution is always the problem that everyone wants to solve. They're like, look, we have all these amazing tools, we have the best CRMs, but I think there's certain things that you just can't touch, like the product. Like, it's hard to really understand how it leads to like the end game, which is revenue. And I think with what you're doing, you start at the top and then you work your way down. And I think everyone's doing the opposite.
Well, yeah, I think you've got to attack it from both sides to some
Yeah.
extent. I think that I would call myself a pragmatic optimist, and so there are elements of affiliate, i.e., the affiliate partner has a bit of a black box, right? And I'm I'm not going to be able to change that, right? So that is a sort of a known that we need to work within. And I think with a bit of pragmatism and some smart BI is that you might have to make some assumptions. And so in that sort of middleware layer, so to speak, you might have to make some assumptions and almost smear that across your data, right? Or in a perfect world, this would be the metric. X would be the metric. We can't get that. So what's next? And that's what we run the business off. And as long as we're consistent on that and we iterate and refine it, that's fine. Whereas maybe some people are just sat there going like, well, we're never going to know everything from the partners. So we're not going to do it.
Yeah, makes sense. Uh, so you've got a background in economics, and I wanted to go back to the skill sets of. I know what your skills are. I don't have an economics background. I'm kind of learning this as I go, and I do believe that the finance and the BI skills are important. So, what are things that you think people should pay attention to in both of those segments, especially knowing that I think they really always go well together?
Yeah. So I did do a BA economics, but I think that people that know me, especially from uni, would say that I'm nowhere near smart enough for a career in economics, which is why I then went and sort of played poker professionally for a bit and fell into paid search and other things.
Nice.
But the degree was great because it allowed lots of different modules. So it did sort of politics, development, economics, maths, like and other sort of supporting pieces, and it gave quite a sort of rounded introduction to certain things. Um, and actually, if I'm being honest, I've done very little structured learning in my career, and it maybe that's bad, maybe that's good. I'm not sure. Sort of the only certificate piece of paper I could shade to you in the last probably 5 years plus is related to Agile and Scrum, which partly as I started to look after CRM teams, more in that development space who work in that way. Um, I wanted to do that to one, understand how they work, but two, actually that sort of holding yourself to iterating value, which is what I take out of that sort of agile scrum approach. That point we just made around it's never going to be perfect, but let's just do something. You know, I think that iterating value is something that I'm constantly trying to do. Like, what can we do? What can we move forward in the next couple of weeks? And you start to build that momentum. Um, sorry, back to your question. I would say, and if I'm talking to people or giving any advice, the route I've taken that worked for me is I just rolled my sleeves up and got on with it. Like I've got involved. And I think I've sort of become a bit of a person in businesses being known for getting things done. I prioritize things and are curious. And then the other piece is I always tell people when I'm interested in something. So for instance, even as a relatively junior person, I said to the MD, I'm interested in the budget process. I want to be involved. And that was like, okay, well, the budget process it's just happened. It's not going to be for 9 months time. That's fine. Just lay your marker down and say, this is what I'm interested in. And I don't, the things that we're talking about, I don't think, or I haven't seen this. I don't think there's any courses or anything that you're going to do to really give you, um, like the skills and the capability to do this, uh, especially as well, as we said, affiliates is a little bit entrepreneurial, right? It's a little bit more Wild West than other areas. And RevOps is slightly more undefined. Like you just got to get involved.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think when you look at the whole affiliate marketing space, the SEO space, I mean, no one I know has gone to school for it. And there's been some where probably the most common background I've seen in affiliate marketing is lawyers dropping out of school to become affiliates. And actually, I met a bunch of people that studied business, maybe some finance, but when I look at their backgrounds, it's everything. And I think you're right. I think there's a lack of roadmap when it comes to well, you can go to school for economics and finance, which I think are still great and practical degrees. But on the other side of it, for business intelligence, there are tons of schools offering certificates and diplomas and courses that are kind of like a bit finite. But when you start shopping for any of this stuff, I mean, there's too much stuff on the market. There's every single course you can think of. You can zero in on Looker Studio, on Tableau. You got new shiny toys that seem to come out like every, few months, like Hex.tech and N8N and Rose.com, and it just never ends.
Yeah, and I think that um, there's two schools of thought in some of the things we've been talking about, which is, do you become to an element well, especially if you're a solo RevOps person and a more junior person, and in finance, right? It's exactly the same. And in affiliates, you've just got to become a bit of a jack of all trades and master of none. Um, I am not the most technical person at anything at all, like at all. But I have just enough knowledge, which is probably dangerous if you are really technical in the area, to be able to understand that you can like build this journey. But I am not the person to build that journey. And the other sort of part of success is like hiring people that are really smart and trying to pay them as much money and getting out of the way, which is the old cliche. Like it, that's really like that is really important. Um, and I I've never been interested in being like the gatekeeper of the systems or like the most technical person. That's not my interest. My interest in the person, like the flag in the ground I want to plant is I'm sort of like I'm the commercial guy. I understand the numbers, the levers we need to pull, and sort of one where and how we are trying to get there. Yeah.
Cool. Because we chatted before, and you were asking, me and my company a whole bunch of questions, and I found them very insightful, especially the ones where we started getting into CRM, from an affiliate point of view, and this concept of inventory. And this inventory thing made me realize that I'm like, okay, what is lacking in affiliate marketing on both sides of the fence for the operators, the affiliate managers, the affiliate programs, and then on the affiliate sides? I do think there's a lack of a real core CRM. And I think the concept that you kind of iterated was this concept of inventory. Like, what is our inventory? And can we put it into a box? Can we define it? And it made me think that across affiliates, I think there's almost no standards on this. Like, we're actually building our own inventory assets for our B2B stuff. And we did this before running affiliate sites, and we just never really had a system for it. I'm just wondering if this is kind of like an untapped space that could be built into something.
I mean, I think so. I will hold my hands up and say, I don't think I know. I know, 1% of what you guys know about affiliates. So I'm not sure. I think I've had lots of conversations with people and I did spend a bunch of time in agency, about 10 years ago where we did run affiliates. So I have a bit of knowledge. It does feel like there's a gap there.
Yeah.
Um, talking to everyone, there isn't anything that comes off the shelf. Now I would balance that with every industry or vertical thinks that they're special and that it can't be that like, oh no, you can't use Salesforce or HubSpot, whatever it is, because we do things differently. Um, I'm quite a big fan of off the shelf tool and off the shelf specialists. So like yourself, right? Like, you know, I I don't want a super complicated tech stack, but if someone's really good at doing a thing, I would much rather work with them than a company that's sort of trying to bolt lots of bits on. The core offering isn't as good, and the bolt-ons don't quite work. Um, but sorry, just back to the inventory piece because, well, I'm also interested to talk to people who want to talk about this. But what we were talking about before, right? And how I see after after being at Fine for a couple of months, I think what we need um, you know marketing and generating some leads, marketing automation platform, sort of that's fairly standard. And then a CRM that is used to manage customer data and where salespeople can view dynamic pricing based on the available inventory. An inventory could be top lists, it could be placements, it could be newsletters, it could be programmatic, th- it's a catch-all term for all of the stuff essentially. But I think the key is that the inventory automatically considers all the brand restrictions, has all the relevant affiliate links, and I've spent most of my life in HubSpot and Salesforce. So when I say link to the account, that's sort of Salesforce language of the account object, company in HubSpot. And then as the opportunity is closed won, that inventory is removed from the price list immediately. So another salesperson can't sell the same thing. And then that placement, top list, whatever, is automatically updated, based on the right date. So at midnight in a quarter or whatever it is, the top list flips over. And so back to what we were talking before, I don't think a salesperson or a ad ops manager or a tech person or a CS is going to be able to tell that story.
Yeah.
Because they're just trying to take off chunks of it. And they're much better placed to take off a chunk of it than I am. But you need to have that complete journey, because otherwise there's a bit of a so what. Like, you have a brilliant CRM, or your trafficking, all of your links are perfect, but so what? Because you've got this massive manual piece to do with the image.
Yeah. It's kind of like you as the orchestrator to say, okay, you can do all those things individually. Like the sales, they're going to be like, okay, I want to basically put my billing items, my insertion orders in one category, but it's kind of you saying, hey, you can build them all individually, but at some point they can and should go together.
Yeah. And we come back to the scale bit, right? Which is, I don't know, 10 years ago, if we wanted to scale a business, you would hire 5 more salespeople, right? And they would have X quota, and therefore you're going to do Y more. But what people have started to realize is, well, there's lots more ways to grow a business than hiring more salespeople, or adding more customers. Not that you don't want to do those things, but that setting things up for scale and repeatability, is how businesses get sold, is how they get large funding rounds, right?
Yeah, that's very true. So you've got I know you've got experience in paid search, paid social, SEO, and then you've got different experience on the M&A side of business, I believe. So taking this whole collection of what you have as your experience, when you came into iGaming, what did you see? Like, did you see um, the common thing I hear from a lot of people is that they thought it would have been way more technically advanced, but maybe you might see that as a positive thing where it's like, this is just a big opportunity to apply RevOps and BI.
Yeah. I mean, the most mad thing is that everyone uses Skype. Like, what the hell is going on, guys? It's not 2006. So I find that hilarious. I don't think I've talked to anyone in the last 5 years that uses Skype, but everyone in affiliate seems to use it. So that was quite a shock. Um, I think that what you've just said is bang on. Is that I would have assumed that with the amount of money and the amount of people doing this, like, that's there, that there would be more of a cookie cutter approach. But actually, what is great is that it feels really entrepreneurial. Like, it feels like you've almost just discovered a new vertical, and that the opportunity for impact and value to be added is huge. If there were 8 off the shelf CRM inventory management systems and the job was install it, that's a lot less interesting than trying to come up with like the overall journey and sort of vision of where we're trying to get to, and then working out how we make that happen in what will probably be an incomplete way because of the black box situation. So yeah, I've found, I think that's the thing that I'm being really drawn to. Um, I've been, it's relevant to what you just said, but I've been surprised by, like, how siloed the nature of the partner. Like, everyone does things in different ways, and there's no uniformity at all. And there's these heavy manual lifts that seem to take place on both, like, publisher and partner, like, everyone just seems to be doing these crazy heavy lifts. And you almost feel like you need like a board or something where people get together and go, hey guys, can we do this in the same way? Um, so yeah,
Now, with a board, would you say like that's one thing that's missing in most companies is they don't really have a structured board. Like as of today, the only board that we have in our company is myself and my business partner. Now, it's not to say that we don't want a board, but we've been very cautious about how we do this because we've had people that have come on board in the company and not worked out after 3 months, and you got to give them time to realize is it a fit or not. But I'm just thinking that what a board could and should do is bring good ideas and maybe ask the uncomfortable questions. And a lot of the most common uncomfortable questions are always finance related.
yeah, yeah. It's a really interesting point. So I've worked for P or VC backed companies for the last, I don't know, 8+ years, and find like yourself don't have are you know I suppose bootstrapped up, and they've got to where they have with CEO or founders doing well, and that's amazing. I cannot tell you the amount of time I've spent over the last whatever 8-9 years doing things because a board has asked, the Eye of Sauron has turned onto X part of the business, and the C-suite know that it's not going to move the needle. You know that it's not going to move the needle, but somebody important has asked a question, and therefore we need to go and answer that. And only being at Fine for a short time, I feel like I've got about 20% of my time back because there isn't a board asking those questions. But I also think that they would be likely in a better place, from a sort of tools and systems and process place if you had that board. So I don't know. I don't know. The pros and cons.
It can always be added if you think it matters, but I guess it depends on the size of your organization, what kind of growth you have, and I guess really what is the end goal.
Yeah, and I would imagine for yourself a way that you could do it is say, right, what are our strategic objectives? Like, what are we trying to do? Where do we want to be in a couple of years' time? We want to be doing X. So we talked about CRM, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you might, board is maybe too fancy a term, right? But you might just bring an advisor in that says, okay, fine. Like your job is to ask annoying questions and really like hold us to account on this piece of the business. And then maybe that sort of grows out into something wider. Um, yeah, that might be sort of the pragmatic way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, out of interest, why didn't they work out?
Ooh. I know they don't listen to this podcast. So I don't feel.
No, I suppose not on a personal level, but I
Yeah,
suppose,
yeah.
was it like a sort of a structural, or they weren't close enough to the business to be able to provide the value? Like how? What was the problem?
It's been anything and everything.
Okay.
So it's been like a few different people. It's just been vision not aligned. Their priorities within the company not aligned. We've had it where it's just been total culture clash. Where like, look, you're just rubbing people the wrong way, and we're all fighting. We're not getting work done. We're actually spending time in meetings that just are not productive at all. I think that's kind of like another part of business where when you've got someone that doesn't work, it's the longer you keep them on, the more damage that you do. But for the most part, I find what our personal biggest problem is. Um, One part I believe we are solving, which is like we are a data and analytics company or a BI tool for affiliates to help them be better with their numbers. And we haven't been that in the past. So we've basically gotten sharper on that. And investors have helped us in saying, we're going to be the brutal ones asking the tough questions. So go get this done. Make sure you sharpen your P&Ls. But I think the other part of what we have in our personal situation, and I'd say it's probably not that much different than Find, is what direction do you want to go? Like for us, we could be going further into CRM, into business intelligence. We could go into ad tech. And I think with a company like Find, it's kind of like, well, do you want to go like acquire more larger media sites, or do you want to be like super niche? Everything's kind of fluid. And I think, what helps is to have people that have experience and kind of going, well, I think this. And then, you're maybe not going to solve those questions in a quick, like 30-minute call, but our job is to see the market, talk to our users and get an idea of like what's happening on the market. Like what are the conversations that are being talked about, like CRM, for example, where it's like, wait a minute, there isn't a proper CRM for affiliate marketing. And then the same would be on the same for Find side to kind of go, well, what is working? Like if you saw the revenue, the conversion rate starting to trend down, but the traffic remaining the same, you'd be like, we got a big problem here that we got to solve. Like, are we in the right space or does our product need to change?
Yeah. 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 And there's some, just on the CRM piece, there's some, a really obvious to me strategic question is, well, are you building a CRM or actually you saying that you want to build, for instance, a plugin into an app store that could sit in Salesforce or HubSpot store, right? Because that's a very, very different way to go, but you could probably dip your toe in it much easier, much cheaper, much quicker, and almost get that product market fit where a good example would be like lead distribution. So, you get a load of leads in and you want to give it to X people based on Y and Z. And CRMs don't do that. But actually, I've always ended up just adding a plugin in on top of an enterprise CRM. I wouldn't buy a tool to do it. So yeah, that sort of like nuance is important. Um, I think one of the things that I've learned, um, and I've obviously I've never run a business, so I've never done that. Um, is the clarity of focus of where you're going to the organization of what you're trying to do is so crucial. And it doesn't even actually have to be a good plan. It just has to be a consistent plan. Um, a CEO once told me, he said that he was just going to say what the company was trying to do until everyone just hated him, basically. I called it the Christmas party test. So you walked in at Christmas party and you asked everyone, what does the company do? And, if you get back 80, 90% of people saying the same thing, then, the marketing director can keep their job. And if not, might have to have a conversation. But I think that as like a direction of thought is quite important.
Well, it's interesting because, going back to 90% of businesses fail, do you think maybe in our industry, there's too many companies that are not only sales focused, but they're money focused, but in the wrong sense? Like money is like win the money at all costs, which could destroy your future. It's almost like they don't like there's a lack of care about the customer and the product. Like the people that are super passionate about product and all that, and they're saying, look, we don't want to build just another online casino site, or we don't want to just build another affiliate site. And I think Google's already pushing people around and saying, look, if you're just going to be another one of those, another affiliate sites, why is Google going to give you that traffic? And I think Google, with the restructuring of the search with helpful content updates and all of these different updates, I think it's actually putting that question back on affiliates where I'm watching affiliates in the background. I go on Ahrefs and I even talk to them. It's like their sites are struggling. They're like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you're doing what used to work, but it's not working anymore. I think if you only have the money hat on, I think that's maybe the biggest risk in the business.
Yeah. And yeah, it's that sort of short term gain, versus the strategic direction, um, which is always difficult. And I've always thought about it. If you can have the CEO doing the long term stuff full time, and if you have the MD or the CRO or like whoever that role is doing the day to day, that's a really good way, sort of organizationally, to say to people like this is who's responsible for these things, and this is why like, I'm talking about this, and this person is talking about this, and holding those people to account for those pieces. Um, but it's also as a business, it's about confidence, right? It's about confidence in the the business in the medium term to be able to say, no, 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 this is our product. Like really understanding your ICP and your product
Yeah.
market fit and being confident in it to, as you say, maybe not take a big deal with, you know, let's say someone turned up and said, I'm going to pay you X because we want you to build the CRM. Well, that could be a major issue where your core product just doesn't get the love and attention it needs. Three other people spin up versions in the next 6 months. Actually, no one else is interested in a CRM. because maybe they just want to plug in, or maybe affiliates aren't special at all. And actually you can just do it normally through custom objects. And yeah, so I completely agree.
And then going full circle back to the very beginning where we started talking about the sales versus marketing. I just did a newsletter this morning that just went out automatically before recording. And it was me talking about, you know, going back to Chris Walker's podcast about, the sales and marketing being very misaligned. And I'm wondering if maybe iGaming has too much emphasis on sales. Like there's sales on the affiliate side, like go get all these sales done, go get your deals and get them at all costs. And I think we have them on the other side, the affiliate managers, where their sales focus, I don't think they've got a good CRM to manage things. They might use HubSpot and Salesforce to get the leads, but there's just a lack of let's build a relationship. And I'm just thinking this relationship, product, and marketing. I think marketing is probably the thing we're missing the most in iGaming.
Yeah, so I think just a sort of couple of thoughts on that. I think there's some things that sort of BI, RevOps, even finance can do to help that, which is what are the metrics that help counter that? So for instance, a traditional marketing metric, right, would be how many leads you're driving, like
Yeah.
MQLs or whatever. Actually, I think that a really good, powerful metric there is percentage of MQLs or leads that meet ICP. So,
Yes.
if as a find, if we're a publisher, we know based on history that, X, Y, and Z make a good partner and it's worth our time and their time. But as a salesperson, it can just be worth, like, if you can sign up 14 year accounts, why not sign up 14 year accounts? But actually, for my RevOps town, the downstream problems of that, of onboarding them and the ad ops and everything like that, it's not ICP. Like, why are we doing this? And yeah, John, the salesperson, can stand there and say, "Hey, I onboarded 14 new accounts, it's a new record," but it's like, so what? Um, and on the customer success side, because I would say customer success gets the least love in all the industries I've ever worked in, and it's the least. It's partly because it's like the least definable as a process because you're just reacting to customers. And I sent your guys 5 emails yesterday on probably 4 different things. Right? You can't build a process for that. Everyone got back to me very quickly, by the way, just for clarity's sake. Um, but a really good metric on the other side is time to value. So comes a bit from the SaaS world, but time to value, which is you pick a point at which you think you have delivered value to your customer. So for instance, for you guys, it might be that, they've got their first account logged in and the numbers work or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And then that is what you track, and you use as a KPI to determine that if customers are happy.
Yes.
Not NPS, not, you can do, obviously you have lots of other health metrics, but I found that the time to value is a really powerful metric if you can get it working. And obviously you tweak it for your business. And the key, the really interesting thing is it's not always the shorter the time to value, the better. Because actually you might be able to get an account working within 2 minutes, but I've got no idea what to do with the platform or what to do next. Anyway, so just to maybe some practical ways that you can actually start to counter what you were talking about.
Yeah. So I definitely want to touch on that a bit more, but I want to take a step back where it's like I can't tell you how many times people try to set up meetings with me at conferences. I'm like, I'm not your ICP.
Yeah.
Why are you? And they get offended when I tell them this and say, look, we're going to be wasting each other's time. I can't do this. And it's like they care more about just saying, hey, I've got a fully booked calendar than they do saying, hey, my calendar's half booked, but it's all the ICP.
Yeah. 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 Or even it's just, I've got 2 meetings.
Yeah.
And that also then comes from the town work that should have been done at the beginning of the year or for the budget that says, do you know what, there's this many accounts we want to go after in ICP. We've already got these, a successful win rate would be this. Actually, do you know what, John? If you can get 2 meetings a month we convert them through it. Do you know what I mean? You build that funnel and that budget back to the financing, and that model would be a living, breathing thing that I would be working on and keeping up to date with finance, with FP&A, probably using BI. I think that's how you get almost that confidence, right? To be able to say, good news, meetings are down 200% from last year, but that, that's good because we're getting double the amount of meetings that we want to get, and we want to get them because of this.
Yeah. And that's almost like common sense BI right there.
Yeah, exactly.
And then last but not least is what do you see of the future of affiliate marketing as it intersects with business intelligence?
Well, I think lots and lots of opportunities. So, like any sector, it's going to become hand in hand. So, actually, one of the initial projects, so we've got a head of BI who's joined recently. He's been running a process to bring on a new BI tool, but you can see that these BI tools are and their ability to answer questions, do projections, and all of that sort of thing. I think everyone is saying it's in an alpha stage at the moment. So, the question of which of, I've got one space left on. If you had the vision of the inventory management and I've got one top list place left, who should I give it to? Right. The latest generation of BI tools, I'm not quite at the stage where they can tell you. I think they could, but you'd have to do a lot of prompting. But give it 6 months, give it 12 months. You're going to be able to ask these tools, like, essentially, if I had £1, where would I put it next? Right.
Yeah.
And they're going to be able to come back to you and say, okay, and then that impacts dynamic pricing because actually, on paper, it looks like I should charge you X, but we can tell that you're going to do Y. And so actually it's in our interest to incentivize you to buy this play, all of
Yeah.
that complexity. So, um, probably partly because I'm working on this at the moment, but I can see that really coming together. Especially as I know you guys are working on it, you get that player level tracking to be able to give a really, well, a more detailed funnel.
Yes.
Um, and then the other piece, which I think is quite interesting, which again I haven't really got into yet, but is the recurring versus new player,
Yeah.
and then the sort of strategic direction based off that. So, you know, what are we trying? If a lot of our deals are CPA based, then actually we want to be doing very different things in marketing, or nurturing sort of individuals, versus if it's a rev share, thinking about, are you are certain areas full, are they saturate, so I think all of that, and that's the sort of thing that you have those discussions and that sets up the next year, right? That should set the direction. So I think those are a couple of things that I thought about when I saw that question.
Yeah, I think inventory is profound on both sides of the fence. One where you already have the inventory defined, but imagine being able to use some sort of inventory CMS that says, "Hey, uh, would you consider a newsletter? Does it make sense for your business? And if so, how much more revenue could you generate?" And then imagine adding that because I mean, I've run into a lot of affiliate sites. I'm like, you're missing a newsletter. You're missing out on an opportunity to capture what you've already taken advantage of from Google. And the second you lose Google, it's like we've had a drop in Google traffic in the past, and the newsletter saved our life in that case.
You're right. The sort of de-risking revenue streams, or I suppose partner streams, crucial, right? And if you can layer on top of that some um, positive ROI, performance marketing, newsletters, as you program out, like the other revenue streams, you've got a much more robust business that, as you say, can roll with the punches of Google changes.
I've got more questions, but we're out of time, and I'll either ask them off record, or maybe we've got another opportunity for another podcast. Ben, thanks a lot for doing this. I think I definitely need to have more finance and RevOps people on here. I think it's one part of the industry not talked about enough yet in affiliate marketing. So, how can people get a hold of you?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I'm always happy to chat. or talk about these problems. So yeah, just LinkedIn message.
And that'll be included in the show notes. Ben, thanks a lot for doing this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to the Affiliate BI podcast. I'd like to take this time to ask for a small favor to leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. That helps us expand our reach to rank higher in podcast directories and reach more listeners.